Bird, 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 bird! Get him, get him, get him, get him, get him! Yeah! Ron Babe was right. Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry.
You are listening to the Hunting Dog Podcast.
OnX is the title sponsor of the Hunting Dog Podcast. All my grandpa's dogs love their gunner kennels. All my grandpa's dogs wear Garmin collars. All my grandpa's dogs use Canine Athlete. All my grandpa's dogs eat Purina Pro Plan. My first turkey and my first buck were shot with my Mossberg. My grandpa only uses Bosch shot shells. My grandpa is always wearing marsh wear. My grandpa always wears his Arcus boots. And
real loud.
My grandpa isn't happy down here in Florida. He can't find any Watermark beer.
Thank you, Lawson. Thank you, Ronnie.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody. I am on a little vacation down in Florida, and it took a little coordinating to get these three guests to come on the show because they're all busy fighting for you and what you like to do. And that's Marilyn Vetter with Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, Ben Jones with Rough Grouse Society and American Woodcock Society, and Ted Cook with North American Grouse Partnership. So real quick, not real quick, a condensed version starting, I'll go with Marilyn. We're going to go up and we'll keep it in a circle. Marilyn, just in case someone's been living in a closet, a little bit about Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever.
First of all, thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. And with such a friendly audience, the three of us work together really closely. So it's a lot of fun. Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever. We are obviously conserving habitat for our namesake birds, but also do a lot of work along with Ted. We do a tremendous amount of work with prairie grouse, so prairie chickens, sharp-tailed grouse as well. But predominantly our work is preserving and restoring habitat for upland game bird species, the 6 quail species of the United States, and pheasant and prairie grouse. We have about 165,000 members across country, a little over 740 chapters, and also have a couple of chapters in Canada that do the similar work up there as well.
Wow. All right. Ted, this is the one, like we said before we hit record, how come I haven't heard of North American Grouse Partnership? Not saying I never heard of it, but give us a little piece of this, because this is kind of why I heard you on a podcast. I'm like, I need to get you three together because I just don't think people know.
Well, and we really are together. So excellent observation, Ron. And again, thanks for having us. So North American Grouse Partnership was founded 26 years ago, the day after peregrine falcons were removed from the Endangered Species Act by the falconers who recovered peregrine falcons. They all got together and said, you know, the number one thing we love to fly our hawks on is prairie grouse, and prairie grouse are going down the tubes. This is 26 years ago, 1990, or 1999. And so they formed the North American Grouse Partnership. We've been kind of low-key behind the scenes, really ramping up lately. And we include all 12 North American grouse species, but we focus on the prairie grouse species because grasslands are the most threatened ecosystem on the continent and in the world.
Yeah.
And with strong partnership with Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, and strong support from Marilyn and her team, we've really been able to grow our voice. And as Marilyn cogently observed, we're really, we have memberships, we offer memberships, we love support from members, but we're not focused on being a membership organization. We're a science-based policy advocacy group. And even though we include all 12 North American grouse species, a lot of forest grouse are doing pretty well. There's another grouse species that's not doing so well. That's also not a prairie grouse, and that's ruffed grouse. And we always defer to our friends at the Rough Grouse Society, who are miles ahead of us, certainly, and everyone else when it comes to trying to conserve and promote rough grouse conservation. So that's our role.
Ted, you segued right to Ben perfectly. My gosh, I loved it. Ben.
Appreciate it, Ted.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, Marilyn. It's really fantastic to be on with y'all. Appreciate you a whole bunch, Ron. It's around this time of year, Ron. I think fondly back the first time we ever did this. I'd only been at RGS for a few months. It was around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I don't know if you recall this or not, but I'm pretty stoked. New CEO of the Rough Grouse Society to get on the Hunting Dog podcast, and maybe a little bit of jitters, but I'm fired up to do this. The power goes out at our house. So it's like it might have been the day after Thanksgiving, the day before, everybody's kind of around off school, and the power goes out right before I'm supposed to go on your podcast. So good time of year, wax nostalgic a bit about all the times we've talked since then. Really, really appreciate you being an ambassador. But so I blew Ted's segue already by going on a tangent. But we work with the forest grouse. Founded in 1961, the Rough Grouse Society, so we're coming up on 65 years, and was founded in Monterey, Virginia, by some people who are really interested in learning more about how to conserve forests for wildlife. And some of them were grouse hunters, but rough grouse hunting wasn't the core of what they did. It was always based on a tenet of science and learning more about how to conserve forest wildlife, with rough grouse as a really good flagship species.
Yeah.
And of course, in 1961, there was still a lot that we were learning at that point. There's always more to learn, but the science of forest and wildlife management was still pretty young at that point. So through the decades, we've really hung our hat on that tenet of learning more science-based management of forests and wildlife. And that's what we do today. And rough grouse are a great bellwether. And also, of course, synonymous with rough grouse across much of their range are American woodcock. So in 2014, we added the American Woodcock Society to our repertoire. And so now we work in landscapes where there aren't rough grouse, but especially this time of year, American woodcock are spending their winters, like the coastal plain in Piedmont, or the Carolinas and the Gulf Coast. So grouse, woodcock, forest management, and probably, though we work closely together on so many things, especially with advocacy and public lands and having good support for private lands management, the divergent part of where we are with the Grouse Partnership and Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, is we're really focused on the forest management side.
Right. Which is, you said to me one time, now that's probably going to be incorrect because Ted brought up the fact that the grasslands are disappearing. I would say Ben's biggest problem, Ben being rough grouse and hunters, chainsaws were disappearing on east of the Mississippi, right? It was almost like littering out the window. Oh, you're going to cut a tree down, I mean, there's challenges to every group. And I'm sure at some point, whether it was the anti-logging or people just didn't understand forest management. So if you would, again, I'm going to start with Marilyn without a dissertation on it. The challenges for PF and QF, like what are the bigger challenges?
Well, obviously we're pretty excited that the Farm Bill was extended for another year, because that, for us, the conservation title of the Farm Bill is a really incredibly important part of policy for our landowners, because our team spends the majority of their time working with private landowners to deploy conservation on their properties. Yeah. Ted already mentioned one of our biggest challenges is disappearing grass. Our birds are grassland birds, and grass, for whatever reason, doesn't have as sexy of a persona as a tree does. And so, Ben's trying to understand and get people to understand appropriate logging. We're trying to get people to understand that, you're trying to save a tree when Ben says, no, healthy forests have cut trees, and we're saying grass needs to be preserved instead of just mowed over with housing developments. And we're not saying that grass doesn't have to get converted sometimes, but there is so much of our native prairie that is gone
Right.
that it's really hard to restore that.
Yeah.
So why the conservation title is important, particularly with CRP and EQIP and CSB and all of the different programs, crap, that those are the programs that we can help deploy. But the challenge is those consistency of policies is really important. And so that's why we were excited that the Farm Bill got extended for another year, so that as Congress works through their funding issues, at least farmers and ranchers have some stability going forward. One of the things that I noticed in the introductions is this maturation process. So when I think about our community, Ducks is older than all of us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Ben's organization is the next oldest,
Yeah.
then mine, then Ted's. So PF and QF started in 1983. And the maturation, it seems to be in all of our organizations, is that we get started by these very dedicated, most of the time hunters, who understand that the landscape is shifting and changing. And so you start doing what I would random acts of conservation.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be
And,
right. Yeah.
and which is fantastic because by God, we need it. But we're also, as we mature, understanding that we need to be more intentional about where we can save grass, because we can't save it everywhere. And
Right.
we're not going to get it back. We're not going to get houses
Torn down.
eminent
domain over the
right. We're not looking for that. So let's
Right.
find ways to deploy
Yeah.
the limited resources in the right places. And
Yeah.
I think that's probably for us is how do you capture the science, because we aren't a science institution. Our job is to deploy science and help inform science, but then figure out how do we use those dollars to do it in a way that our members are also aligned with, because everybody does want a random act of conservation in your backyard.
Yeah.
Sometimes that isn't the right place to do it. So I think those are our biggest challenges, obviously.
Ted, I mean, I imagine a lot of it aligned, but in the Grouse partnership, is it same, or because you kind of mentioned earlier that you weren't originally a membership based, or I think PF and RGS, they were member heavy to whatever degree. What's your challenges, Ted, for the Grouse partnership?
Well, same as Marilyn and Ben, it's all about habitat, right? I mean, our top three challenges are habitat, habitat, and habitat
Yeah. Yeah.
in these different ways. But the way we've looked at this landscape is people care a whole bunch about, rainforests in South America, while they fail to understand that the most threatened ecosystem on the continent and the world, which is grasslands, is right in their own backyard.
Yeah.
And to really dramatize this point to us hunters, the hunting community, the North American model of wildlife conservation, I'm increasingly concluding, is not well suited to stop the slow, long-term loss of an entire ecosystem. It's just not designed to do that, unfortunately, because of the 9 prairie grouse populations historically found in North America. And when I say prairie grouse populations, I mean populations of greater prairie chickens, lesser prairie chickens, sharp-tailed grouse, and sage grouse. Those are kind of the 4 prairie grouse, but then there's subspecies populations, whatever.
Specials and graders, yeah.
Yeah. Of the 9 prairie grouse populations historically found in North America, 6 of them are either extinct or recognized under the Endangered Species Act, and the other 3 are declining.
Yeah.
And that's happening on our watch as hunters.
Yeah.
And it's not because we don't care. It's just that I used to be able to go out and kill 2 sage grouse a day in Idaho. Now I have to try to draw a tag to kill 2 sage grouse a year in Idaho.
Yeah.
That's happening on our watch.
Yeah.
And the reason is that we're not built as a hunting community. We lose opportunity. Oh, that's too bad. Oh, I used to love to hunt those things. Pretty soon you can't hunt them at all. And when that happens, you can no longer spend hunters' dollars on conservation, and hunters are one of the primary funders of conservation. And then years later, suddenly you're listing lesser prairie chickens under the Endangered Species Act. 11 years ago, you used to be able to hunt lesser prairie chickens in western Kansas, and today they've been listed twice under the Endangered Species Act. So that's, I think, a framing of our challenges.
And Ben, I mean, it's funny, the parallels to the forestry and the grasslands. It's not that we don't have forests. We don't have the right kind of forest. What's the challenges for RGS? Like is it on a federal level because there's so many federal and state-owned forests, or is it on a micro level with individual people? Like they work with a lot of ranchers, so a lot of private ground. What is it? What's the challenge for Rough Grouse Society with property and forestry?
I want to mention the what Marilyn said about the farm bill, and of course, it's the conservation title is huge for the work that they do and work in grasslands. But also, there's a really important, though much smaller, part of that conservation title that helps private landowners do good forestry work. And so that's really important. So I want to echo the importance of the farm bill, and we're also happy to have that rolling for another year. With forest management, it's all about I think the big overarching issue is about communication. It's really difficult to say in a 4.5 second soundbite, which is about what you need right now, that forests are really important for wildlife and you need to cut trees. Wait a minute. I can't do this in 4 seconds. So we have to present this more nuanced conversation about how active stewardship and cutting trees is the thing that's needed for forest resilience and for wildlife habitat. And also then talk about how this is kind of somewhere where our approach can be a bit different than in managing the forest. It can put a commodity product on the market, where with the farm bill and agricultural systems, many times we're asking producers, paying producers to take a commodity product off the market.
Yeah.
So we're really leaning into talking a lot about, enough, Ted, to your point, and listeners here, that's a bit of preaching to the choir as far as the importance of rough grouse and game species. Overall, most people don't know what a ruffled grouse is. And we're not going to expect them to all of a sudden care about rough grouse in their plate. But we can talk about, as much as Gifford Pinchot and Teddy Roosevelt did, what forests mean to local economies, what good forest product mean for those local economies. And then that's the big push that will help get the work done. We're not going to get it done in the name of ruffed grouse or even white-tailed deer for that matter. So it's got to be this bigger market-driven kind of consumer choice kind of thing, and overall society's views toward forest management, which have been pushed by past communications. If we remember the spotted owl wars in the Pacific Northwest, and of course clear cutting for conversion to agricultural land of Central South American rainforests. Those are all things that we don't want, but we have to talk about how cutting trees and sustainably managing forests is different than converting forests to other uses in Central and South America.
Yeah.
So this is really difficult to do in a soundbite communicating world. We've got to be able to tee it up for a little bit longer conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you need to be on 60 Minutes at least, for at least one of you get on 60 Minutes. Well, I'm like when I listened to Ted on another podcast, a friend of mine's podcast, and he mentioned how you can get most of the world to rally around the rainforest. Like whatever they did in the news, like the rainforest is, I am nowhere near knowledgeable to even talk about is that good, bad, or indifferent. But I know when I was a kid, that's what I heard. So I probably thought it was like, oh my God, you don't want to cut down a rainforest. If we could get like Bill and Mary Doe that live in Naperville, Illinois. I don't know a Bill and Mary Doe, just to be totally transparent. But Bill and Mary, they care about the rainforest, and they probably have recycling containers outside their, I've gone through the neighborhoods in the old suburbs where I used to live in Illinois, and you can get people on board with recycling, and you can go to someone's house and throw the can in the wrong thing. Oh no, don't put that beer can in the paper. How did they get the message that like normal, I don't want to say normal, I shouldn't say average citizens that really don't hunt, wouldn't be able to say, as Ben, I love the name ruffled grouse. They wouldn't know what a ruffled grouse is or a sage grouse. They might know what a pheasant is, but how did they get Bill and Mary Doe to participate and be a kind of an advocate. Like and anybody, if you got an idea, I'd like to know, because that's somehow the commercial that I know we're only preaching to the choir here, but how did that happen?
Well, it's interesting. Well, they attached it to emotions for sure. I
Sure.
think about, you mentioned when we were kids, right? Well, one was about littering,
Right.
it's all right. It was harped on us all the time. Don't litter. The
Hmm.
other thing was Smokey the Bear. So, I mean, yeah, it's funny every time I see an ad for, you don't see them like you used to when we were kids.
Right.
I mean, think about how those emotional connections, and it became relevant to them through those kinds of opportunities. And I think about what you're really talking about is how do we get people to see that saving our public and private lands in this country are relevant to everyone,
Yeah.
and it's also their responsibility too. And so hunters feel that because, well, hopefully most of them do, if not all of them, have some idea about responsibility for that because they also partake. Part of
Yeah.
that, the taking part. But for the people that don't, they don't see how this is even relevant to them, and
Right.
they don't sense any kind of responsibility, which gets back to Ted's comment about the North American model. We hunters have assumed the lion's share of that responsibility, along with state and federal government agencies that fund a lot of that work. And so they haven't had to think about it in the past. We've owned that responsibility. And now at this point, one of our biggest challenges is engaging new audiences
Right. And
to
not
be
not
to
trying to
be
make them
concerned.
hunters, trying to
No,
make them advocates of environmental policy. But it worked with the water, like the government, I don't know, when did the Clean Water Act come in? It was a long time ago. And nobody drains their oil in the alley anymore. Nobody, you know what I mean? It's it just amazes me how the 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 population could shift in the thought process in kind of almost, whether it's red or blue or purple, they can all agree that we need clean water, and they can all agree that we should recycle, and we need to get them all agree that you know, the habitat is between the puddles. It's like that doesn't seem to be as important to them. It just doesn't. The trees don't seem as like, oh no, they're growing great. Look at them. They're 70 foot tall. Well, they don't know that that forest is about, good for about what, squirrels, and that's about it, right? I mean, yeah, that message, it's almost like I wish there was you remember when I don't know how many of you went to these movies, but I had to go back when I was a parent. I still am a parent, but they don't listen to me anymore. Back when I was a parent, I went to the Hunger Games, right? The Hunger Game movies. My kids read the book. I went and watched it. It's kind of cool. My daughter Jessie wanted a bow all of a sudden, so I got her a straight a recurve bow. And if Katniss, whatever her name was, what was the name of the character? Katniss Weatherby or something? Katniss. Anyway, if she would have started talking about grassland conservation and forestry, bam, we'd have knocked it out of the park. You know what I'm
No, that's
saying?
great.
Like we just need that one thing where somebody's like, wow, because like you said too, if we can't just tie this into hunting. The hunting's just the bonus at the
there
end.
has been one glimmer of hope, at least on our side of the house.
Mhm.
Pollinators.
Yeah.
When people started talking about honeybees and monarch butterflies, it was something they could relate to. And that's, I think, the disconnect is we have to find a way it relates to them. And so a lot of people are like, oh, I can get all behind pollinators. Pollinators are great for grassland birds.
Right.
And guess what? Most of them are native species. So that, I would say, has been in the last 10 years a really big differentiator for people to understand. And now you see classrooms doing it, and you see little kids getting engaged. Communities, big urban areas, putting an acre here, a half an acre there of pollinators.
Yeah.
That was, I think, the one way. The aha moment, I think, for me was that it created something, a connection to them that they could relate to.
Yeah.
So I'd like to follow up on that, Ron.
Yeah.
So funny story. When I was first getting into this and, getting familiar with Marilyn and Ron Leathers at Pheasants Forever, I was really noticing, your guys' heavy messaging around pollinators. And I asked Ron, I said, so how do you guys get away with focusing so much on pollinators with your pheasant hunters and your quail hunters? And Ron says, pheasants eat bugs. I just thought that was so great. Three words, and you hit it out of the park. But I also want to tip my hat to Ben here, because Ben, we're trying to follow in your footsteps. When you're talking about what do healthy forests from a ruffled grouse's perspective mean to the average American? And Ben, you point to, well, there's economic benefit to growing ruffed grouse habitat to the landowner that grows ruffed grouse, right? They can harvest trees. And so we've really been thinking about that as well. Ben, I'm super glad to hear you're obviously far down that road, and I'm sure Pheasants is too. But what we realized is the number one issue, and this gets back to the rainforest thing, Ron, the number one issue amongst Americans over to the generations that pull, the number one conservation issue that pulls the best is water quantity and water quality.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's an interesting factoid. Healthy grasslands retain up to 66% more water than bare ground.
Yeah.
Bare ground in the form of tilled agriculture, feedlots, or even overgrazed rangeland. And so what we're realizing is people may not care as much about prairie grouse, but they care a whole bunch about water. And a lot of the places we're working, like right now with a heroic group of rancher conservationists that have chosen to call themselves the Lesser Prairie Chicken Landowner Alliance, the Ogallala aquifer in their neck of the woods is declining. And what can we do to save that? We can save healthy rangelands, and oh, by the way, prairie grouse and lesser prairie chickens along the way. So I think Marilyn talks about pollinators. Ben talks about the economic value of managing forests for ruffed grouse, and we're talking about the water quality and quantity benefits of saving grasslands for prairie chickens. So I think that's kind of the thing. So because when you think about the framing for rainforests, they're the lungs of the planet, and that really resonates.
Yeah, that probably scared a few people. Well,
Yeah.
going back to the old days, it was that the litter commercial. You remember there was the Native American and the tear
Yeah.
came out of his eye?
Who can
I
forget?
mean, you could have voted if he was running for an office, it said Bob Tear-Eye, whatever his name was. Yeah, I want to like you're right. Like, but I would love like well, maybe pollinators is the tip of it. Maybe classrooms are the tip of it. Maybe and at some point it's almost like I don't want to say we wish we'd have renamed these organizations. Should have been the American Tree Company, the American Grassland Company,
Yeah.
the American Pollinator Company. But I mean, we're also proud of the fact that the name of the bird is in our
Yeah.
organizations. It's because that, like you said, Ted, I did not know that it started with people who brought back the peregrine falcon. Like that.
Fascinating.
And I remember, back in the day when that would be on the news, they'd show a brood or, a pair on the ledge in a skyscraper in Chicago. And I was like, why is that? Why is that so cool to everybody? Like we need to find that cool message. And I think we're finding it. Ben, something I noticed, like almost every other issue of Covers magazine, I'm seeing more and more hiring. So the forestry plan, I mean, without going into, like I said, we all could use hours to go into the deep stuff. It sounds like is the ship turning around or starting to pull out of the dock? If you're hiring, it's got to be good.
Yeah, it's going well. And Marilyn earlier talked about the maturation of groups and kind of moving from the random acts of conservation into more going another way we talk about is going from retail to wholesale. And so for us, over the last 4 years, we just crossed a really important threshold. We've impacted over 500,000 acres, 536,000 acres in the past 4 years. That's more acreage than was done in the prior 60 years.
Wow.
So it is going well. And when you see that we're hiring people doing the work on the ground, that's kind of symbolic of that. Now, I appreciate, and we could want for, and there's kind of some amount of luck and maybe a whole lot of money it takes to get this viral communications watershed moment of something like Smokey Bear, which, by the way, on the history of the planet, was the most effective ever marketing campaign.
Right.
So we can keep throwing spaghetti at a wall and try and hope to get that thing. But ultimately, I go back to the core of conservation and the individual that invented the word. And we're talking about Gifford Pinchot and Teddy Roosevelt. This is going to be driven by economics. That's how how conservation came into being, because it was economically important for the health of our country to adopt conservation practices and sustainably manage places. So it, in my mind, ultimately, the thing that's going to make this work won't be a kind of a teardrop moment of some messaging, but the thing that makes the world go round, economics.
Money, yeah.
And so when we can engage with policymakers and we can make sure that investments are being made in sawmills and making sure that there's state-of-the-art equipment there, that there are new forest product things like mass timber that can utilize low-grade wood, also can benefit if we're talking about climate mitigation compared to steel and concrete. We can use these renewable products. We're not even, again, talking about rough grouse or wildlife for that matter. It's the economics and the sustainability of the products and the economies.
Right. Well, that goes to Pheasants Forever. I know I've read many articles on how your biologists and scientists work with the farmers to, it's about money. You'll make more money doing this better piece of land that we could use LiDAR on and say, like, look, you've been wasting diesel fuel planting this.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, yeah, maybe you're right.
And fertilizer and pesticides and everything else, right? You can save
money talk.
Save them money, save runoff that's being wasted. And, Ben touched on the economics. There was a study that was just released that conservation in this country adds $116 billion to local communities. And that's from federal and state investments, our organization's investments, which ends up obviously donor dollars, philanthropic dollars as well. But small communities in rural America are dependent upon conservation, not just individual landowners. And when I think about, you probably have heard of this project around, the Aberdeen Pheasant Coalition, which was the brainstorm for our PATH program.
Right.
And because Aberdeen said, we want to be the #1 county in South Dakota for pheasant hunters. And so those local communities, that local community and community business owners got together and raised money to give private landowners additional dollars to open their private lands to the public.
Yeah.
They knew that was going to turn into dollars in their communities. So I do think it's a very, very important part of our message is this isn't just the right thing to do for the environment, it is the right thing to do for communities as well, particularly those rural communities that don't necessarily have a lot of other resources for them to grow revenues off of.
Yeah. So
run it.
Yeah, please.
Amen to everything Marilyn just said. And of course, we're all going to be in agreement, right? Because we're all working in the same direction. But I just want to point out how important economics is for stopping and reversing the decline of grasslands. So grasslands, most threatened ecosystem on the continent and in the world. 84% of remaining grasslands in North America are privately owned, and the Great Plains are privately owned working ranch lands. Ranching pays less than any other form of land use. That's why grasslands are the most threatened ecosystem on the continent and in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't think I could say it any shorter than that.
That's a sort of Damocles hanging over our heads there.
Yeah. And so the question is, what do we do about that? And Pheasants Forever almost single-handedly, we lose up to 2 million acres of grasslands every single year in North America. Yeah. And Pheasants Forever is the reason that it's not 3 million. Right. And it's not just using these Farm Bill conservation title programs. They leverage that money with private dollars, as Marilyn just said. Right. And then they focus on shoring up the economics of those individuals who would save grasslands. And that's why, like I say, it's not even the losses are not even greater than they currently are. So when we came onto the scene, um, I had just retired from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I was a 30-year federal endangered species biologist. The Grouse Partnership said, "Do you want to be executive director?" I said, "No," and here I am. I realized if I don't do it, who will? So I'm the Fish and Wildlife Service is about to list lesser prairie chickens the second time under the Endangered Species Act. And I'm waving my arms to the state and federal agencies saying we got to do something. And one of the agency biologists said, "Well, Ted, 90% of chicken habitat's privately owned. Where are the landowners in this conversation?" So I called up everyone I knew. I said, who are the best ranchers you know that I can cold call and get me to work with me?" And they gave me these names and numbers. I said, "Hey, I'm Ted Cook, North American Grouse Partnership. I want to save chickens and ranching." And their answer was, "Sorry, we're not interested. We want to save ranching and chickens."
No.
So we thought, wait a minute. And so I asked them, I said, "What do we need to do?" And they basically said, "This is about economics. I mean, we love the land, we love conservation, we even love lesser prairie chickens. But I can double my income overnight by breaking the ground and implementing trying to grow a subsidized crop, even if I don't grow it, I get a guaranteed payment
Yeah.
that significantly increases my income over being a rancher."
Yeah.
Okay. Or I can even lease my ground to an oil and gas company or a solar company or a wind company or a transmission line developer and make money get free money every year in terms of royalties. Or I can let woodland encroachment take over a part of my grasslands to make a terrific white-tailed deer habitat, and I can make more money leasing my land for hunting than I can ranching. Okay? This is why we lose 2 million acres of grasslands a year. And so the Grouse Partnership's thesis is to go to the landowners themselves, say, what do you need to not just, slow this decline, but stop it and reverse it? And what they're asking for is fair market value for the ecosystem services they have to provide. So that's the clean water, clean air, more abundant water, healthy soils, healthy vegetation, wildlife habitat, and yes, even carbon storage, although I'm not sure we're supposed to say that these days. But anyway, so that's the guts of what the Grouse Partnership is doing right now is, and the ranchers themselves say we suck at organizing ourselves. And
Yeah.
so the role the Grouse Partnership is seeking to play is to be their support system to organize themselves, to speak with their outside voice, to say what they need to stop and reverse the loss of grasslands.
You guys are working with the ranchers. Ben's working with the sawmills. Marilyn's working with the farmers. It's got nothing to do with birds.
Yeah.
It's a happy side effect.
Why in the heck do I have you people on the Hunting Dog podcast? All we want to do is shoot
Great,
birds.
great
Now,
observation. Great observation.
and I say that purposefully because, and this gets said every time I have Ben on the show. When I first started hunting, my first license, I still have it. I'm a little bit of an antique collector, and I have my first Illinois license from 1972. And I would my first trip out west, I thought everything that was grass was the same. Like I thought it held birds. I didn't know anything about pollinators. I didn't know anything about invasive species. I didn't know. It just looked like brown grass. Oh, it must be birds there. And I know that the people younger than me now, not just because of podcasts, but because of the magazine articles even has changed. It might not be the one story you want to read, but it's like, oh, I understand brome grass versus bunch grass versus. So I think the younger hunters are more knowledgeable than I was at that age. But why does it take you to get to be about 50 before you start caring about it? And where I'm going with all this is Ben told me once the first time we met, we were at my kitchen in Virginia. He was drinking a Hams and I was drinking a Miller Lite. And he told me the depressing number that about 1% of grouse hunters are actually members of the Rough Grouse Society. Now, I don't know how they did it. I don't know if they did a survey on the roads in Pennsylvania or all over, but I'm sure there's ways with statistics to do that. And that just set me off on this like this path like, come on, people. All right. It's like you don't throw your trash out the window anymore, but you're a driver. You're right. You use your blinker, you follow the speed limit. How come you can't go that little extra mile as a grouse hunter and become a member, even if you don't want to go? And then I remember Marilyn and I think, exchanged some text a while back. What, do you have a rough number, Marilyn, on membership and pheasant hunters? Because
Sure.
pheasant hunting is certainly, with the lodges and the preserves, it's huge, huge, right? It can be in any
About 2 million pheasant hunters in the country on an average. And that's just tracked by licenses across all the states. So if
Okay.
there's 2 million pheasant hunters altogether, 2.6 million probably with quail included.
Hmm.
And like I said at the beginning, our membership's 165,000. And it's grown a lot in the last couple of years, but
But
it
that,
is still a fraction of the general
I mean,
pheasant
that's just a
quail
kick
hunters.
in the, that's a kick in the butt. It is, you know, I'll go back to the story I did offline. We've got to have some kind of action we can take. Um, when the federal duck stamp was put in place, what was that, in the 30s, right? I think the duck stamp. And so I know, because that was a migratory thing. I know this is just a pie in the sky. I have two pie in the sky dreams that if I go online and I want to go to Kansas this year, it doesn't check off it, besides hunter safety and the other things I have to fill out. There should be a question: are you a member of Quail Forever? Or are you a member of, like, and if not, guess what? Your license is going to cost you $30 more. I but
I like that idea.
people would come unglued. They came unglued in Pennsylvania when Pennsylvania had the best state-run pheasant release program. Like, I hunted pheasants in Pennsylvania decades ago. We didn't know where they put them out. Maybe the locals did. We were having just as much fun out there as we did in South Dakota. Not the scenery is different, the sunrise and sunsets are different, but the birds were healthy. They flew. We shot them. We ate them. And I can't remember what year it is. Maybe Ben knows. But the state decided, like, boy, we need a little financial help with this. So we're going to charge you our normal hunting license, and we're going to tack on 25 for the pheasants. And they came unglued. Like, they're literally getting two free pheasants a day that are put out for them. And then they're like, oh my gosh, $25. I don't know how I can get that message across to people, and I've said it, and then you can all jump in on it whatever level you want. I said this, and I did make this up. If anyone takes credit for it, I'll face them on a mat. If you take a wild bird from this country with your dog and your gun, or your hawk, whatever it is, you owe it to the conservation group that supports the habitat of that species. You just flat out owe it to them. And I don't know how to say it any simpler. It's almost like, just, ignorance is a term that gets kind of twisted around. Ignorance is a lack of information. I can't believe how many ignorant hunters there are. And there's my pulpit speech. Now, Ted, and I would say with prairie grouse, if they're at fractional amounts of membership, I know so many people that go out to the Dakotas now. It almost became a thing to destination hunt in North Dakota, Maryland's home state, right? And there is everything's called a blue plate, but there are blue plates in North Dakota like there was in South Dakota 40 years ago.
Yes.
Jason Sutton there, they love the early sharptail season. And do they know anything about the Grouse Partnership? I know you're not a membership based, but do you want to, I don't mean banquets and everything like that, but you do need members, correct? If nothing,
Yeah, so we are membership based. We're really just not, maybe Marilyn Ben can teach me about this, but membership at say $35 a member just kind of treads water, pays for itself.
right.
It can amplify your voice, but here's the thing. If Marilyn and Ben are saying for their much larger organizations, 1% of their hunters join, there's not that many prairie grouse hunters, and if we got 1% of them, maybe we already do have 1% of them. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, it might be so rare that you're at 1%. I don't know.
Yeah, and so really, this gets back to my comments about the North American model and hunters as conservationists. I mean, nobody believes more in the North American model than me. I've been hunting my whole adult life, And I believe hunters are, I don't know, the original conservationists, true conservationists, the best, the hero, hooray, ready for us, hooray for us. But frankly, we're not coming through when it comes to saving the most threatened ecosystem in the world.
Right.
And I don't, I don't want to blame or shame hunters for that. It's kind of, I haven't figured this all out, I'll say, but it's kind of the way we've constructed our society, at least here in North America. Hunters just, you've said it, this whole conversation, right? And others. We're just not building that awareness to get that level of support. And what the North American Grouse Partnership has learned is our most effective, our best, our most committed, our most passionate hunter conservationists are the landowners themselves. Honestly, when you get deep into a relationship with somebody who's a third generation rancher on, gorgeous grasslands in western Kansas, they start sounding like as much or more of an environmentalist than the most, New York City slicker, random theoretical environmentalist you'll ever meet.
Right.
I mean, these people are deeply invested. And so we focused on that side, and we focused on private funding. We just got our first, significant grant 2 years ago. We're very happy with that. We'd love to have more members and members who donate more. Honestly, as a retired federal endangered species biologist, I don't do a very good job of leading our organization down the path of fundraising and membership because I'm too focused on trying to figure out the nuances of where we are policy-wise and how to best empower these rancher conservationist heroes to fulfill their vision of saving grasslands.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it, for what that's worth.
And, membership isn't what's going to necessarily pay the bills. Ted hit on that, membership, it should at least cover their getting their magazine and all of the other things that they get from our organizations. But I think the most important thing about membership is, Ron, you hit on it several times. You read covers, you read our journals, you get educated, and then you have the right to use your voice.
Yeah.
And that's why our membership is so important, is because it gives us power with policymakers. And so when we do have an action alert that we have 300,000 pheasant hunters speaking up, 200,000 quail hunters speaking up, as opposed to 165,000. So to me, those numbers are most important when it comes to policymakers, because if we don't have growing numbers, then we lose our relevance in the conservation title and in conservation policy in general. So my message to hunters normally is, you have a responsibility. We all do. I'm members of all of these guys' groups, along with many others. I tell people, even if you're a pheasant hunter, you should buy a duck stamp, because that is, you've hunted cattail sloughs. You know that our birds share spaces. We should be supporting each other. And whether or not you are hunting pheasants or ducks or prairie grouse or rough grouse, we should be supporting all of this community, because we do work together in all of our spaces. And the hardest part is, if we can't get our hunters to be part of it, then how do we get other people to be engaged? And we need them to be telling that story of why they're members and why they care.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. That's just, it's sad but true. If we can't get the people who pheasant hunt to be members, how do we get back to Bill and Mary Doe in Naperville to worry about a tree, a forest, or a ranch? So that's why I'm telling the listeners of my show that you have to do this. I know I spend more in beer some nights in a restaurant with my friends than a membership. And like you all said, that one membership isn't going to hire a new person. That's a lot of money. That's the skill of the organization to operate and have an operating system that can hire the right people. And that's out of my realm. But that membership, I think you said it great, Marilyn, is like, that gives you relevance and that gives you a voice. But we got to quadruple it, and that's only 4% for Pete's sakes.
Let me follow up on what Marilyn said. The
No.
Grouse Partnership wishes we were like Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, and it wishes we were like the Rough Grouse Society when it comes to membership, for all the reasons Marilyn just said. So that your listeners know, I'm a part-time executive director. I get paid to work 26 hours a week, although I have a hard time keeping it down to that level. But the point is, we're so hyper focused on moving the policy needle now. The North American Grouse Partnership is that we've yet to do a very good job of lifting our head up, looking farther down the road, and doing a better job in recruiting membership and fundraising to get to the level that Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, for all the reasons that we just said. And so I definitely, if your members want to go to grousepartners.org and sign up, we would love it. And if your members want to go to grousepartners.org/LPCLA, that's Lesser Prairie Chicken Landowner Alliance, take their Ranching Strongholds proposal and forward it to their elected representatives and say, do this, that would be even better, because that's the kind of advocacy. So,
Ben, what do you think? Any closing comments here? I mean, what do you think? Besides, how did the hunting season go, which we're not even going to talk about on this one. We all had some kind of a hunting season. That's all that matters. But we wouldn't if it wasn't for these organizations in some states.
Well, as hunters, this is the time of year when you feel it deeply. And something I put in a recent address. So we just crossed this 500,000 acre mark in the last couple years, 536,000 some acres. What does it mean? In our groups, those here and others, it's like, that splashing huge numbers of acres. We're doing tons of work, 1 million acres per year for DU or whatever. I think at that point, is that relatable? Really? It's kind of not to me. Wearing my grouse hunter hat, like, I don't even know what that means. So I wrote a piece recently, bringing it into what does it mean to hunters on the ground to be a member of a group that just impacted 500,000 acres. That's about 72,000 hours worth of hunting time. Okay. Now we're starting to relate it to something that means to me. So it's 10,000 some days worth of first hunts with a new hunter, or last hunts with your dog. So that's where it really starts to take meaning, and also to make sure that as we're going from retail to wholesale, that we do have these projects where our members are within their zip code, so that they can go take advantage of some of those 72,000 hours worth of hunting. Or if they're traveling from Georgia to Michigan, they can enjoy some of that time of field. So there's so much of it that's communicating and marketing and thinking about it, and also at the same time, not letting that become the tail that wags the dog. We can invest a ton into marketing and getting crafty with marketing, but every time we do that, it's also pulling away from something else in our delivery mission. So we've got to find that balance. And sometimes it just comes down to, you got a really cool hat design for your fall membership, and we'll keep plugging along, whether it's talking about tens of thousands of hours that you can spend with your dogs, whether it's a hat that catches somebody's eye. And Marilyn and I our entire teams right now are in the throes of this, with Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday, and this last push. And here's something that is really important for folks listening right now to understand. For us as nonprofits, over 80% oftentimes of our annual funding to drive the mission work that we do comes in the last quarter of the year.
Wow.
90% of that often comes in the month of December. This is a really important month for us fundraising. And like I said, it's all hands on deck. We're doing Facebook Lives and crowdcasts with our teams out there on the ground, GoPros while you're marking timber, whatever. This is a really important time for us. So as your members are listening, if there's anything here that resonates with them, We'd love to have your support through membership contributions. It's what makes the gears go so that we can do this work.
Yeah. Well, if there's anybody listening here that it doesn't resonate with, I wish they wouldn't listen to my podcast anymore because it should resonate with everybody, you know.
I bet we're singing to the choir.
Yeah,
I bet your listeners are very committed.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, but I'll guarantee you, I wish I could do a really deep down dive in like a covert operation to find out which of my members which of my listeners aren't members. It probably won't be 1%, but I'll bet you I'll be a little embarrassed to find out that a lot of them just want to be entertained, like, or they just want to be able to go hunting once a year. They just want what they want and they don't see the bigger picture. So, I said something a couple years ago and I didn't do it last year just because I'm a forgetful old guy. But I had my three daughters. They said they always want to go, what do you need for Christmas, Dad? I don't need anything. You know, I really don't need it. And every guy gets that age to the point where you're like, I really don't need anything. And I had them get me in their name subscriptions or memberships, depending on where, like, I think Hunter and Mackie did Quail Forever, Jesse did Pheasants Forever, and Kelsey did Rough Grouse Society. I said, you join in your name, you get the magazine, and when I got to come over and listen to them little screaming grandkids, at least I have a magazine to read. So that's my birth. That's their Christmas present to me to join a group. But that same note, that article about pollinators might be there, and their friends might be over playing cards or Monopoly, and you just don't know what it'll reach. You don't know if it'll touch something that. So that's my suggestion to everybody. If you don't know what you want, and you can't make this a mandate by the state, when somebody says, what do you want? You say, I want you to join this group or all three groups and keep that magazine in the house for when I come to visit. At least put it in the bathroom.
Yeah, there you go.
Can you see that all right?
Well, now it's blurred out.
A little blurry because your background. Put it in front of your face.
Tilt it forward.
Oh, that didn't work either, darn it.
That made it worse.
Anyway, this is our magazine that just arrived. It's got a beautiful shot of rough grouse in a tree. I mean, has holidays written all over it. So this should be on the counter, on the coffee table. And this happened the other day. I had a friend come in who's a member of RGS, not because he's a grouse hunter, but because he's a good friend. Yeah. And there were a bunch of kids running around, and I had this, and I don't know, maybe there was a Project Upland thing, a couple things sitting out on the coffee table, and he had a kid on each lap running through these magazines that were sitting out. So to your point, Ron, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's what I give, and I tell grandparents, it's a great opportunity. Give it to your grandchildren. Right. They aren't going to know until they've been exposed. It's a great opportunity to expose people that aren't familiar with it. So if you have a best friend that loves to go hunting with you and isn't a member,
make them a member
for a membership for a year, and they'll understand the value of it, because I don't think people really understand the value until they've experienced any one of our organizations.
Right. Well, I can't think of anything else to wrap it up with. If anybody's got a last, other than and I mean this, I strongly encourage listeners, get involved. And it doesn't mean you have to volunteer for a banquet. Be great if you did. It doesn't mean you have to go out with a chainsaw and cut a new trail, but the membership is needed. It's almost like at least knowing that someone's on your side, you know, like, because you could operate at some level, Pheasants Forever, with less employees and still get some property done. But without that membership base, I mean, it's kind of indicative of how big it's grown, right? Because of the membership base. That the memberships didn't change the mind of the farmer or the town or Aberdeen, but Pheasants Forever message was there because they had this support group of like, go team. They had the cheerleaders. We need cheerleaders. That's it. Pump.
So Ron, I have one thought. I'm going to encourage all of your listeners to consider attending Pheasant Fest Quail Classic in Minneapolis in February.
Yeah.
Because all three of our
It's
groups
a
are going to be there.
destination then, always.
Absolutely. Yeah, Minneapolis in February. It's awesome. Because all three of our groups are going to be there at a place that we're calling Grouse Camp. And it's thanks to leadership from Marilyn and her team and, Bob St. Pierre. I think, Marilyn, can we call this the largest gathering of native grouse groups
I
in
would
the
guess
in
so.
the history of North America?
Yeah. I mean, I think about a lot of the subgroups of your organization, Ted, are going to have their own Minnesota Prairie Chickens and
Yeah.
Sharptails, and all of those smaller groups are going to be present too. So it's probably going to be the biggest grouse camp we've had.
Yeah, which is really fun and exciting. And again, thanks to Marilyn and Bob St. Pierre and her crew for creating that space and an opportunity for us to show up and be together in that environment to say, hey, native grouse matter too. And I tell you, I leave there with more energy than I came in with because it's 30,000 of the world's most passionate upland bird lovers. And when they come by the booth and I say grasslands are the most threatened ecosystem on the continent and in the world, I'd say more than half of them shake their heads like, yep, I know. I mean, you talk about an informed, passionate audience, and it's a love fest. Anyway, so I encourage your
It is.
listeners to attend.
I appreciate that, Ted. If I had a closing comment, I would say thanks to the gentlemen on the screen who have been so supportive of our organization and me being not quite 3 years into the job, and to our members that are members. Quite honestly, I think about particularly our volunteers. It's hard to be a volunteer anymore. People's lives are crazy busy, and it's been harder to get people to understand the value of volunteering their time. And while we don't have enough of them, by God, the ones we have are amazing. And we could not do the amount of work that we all do without our volunteers.
Yeah. Ben, anything from you? Boy, that was a tough boy. Maryland, that's kind of a hard one to. It's like following a really good comedian and being the next one up.
The volunteerism is really tough, and I get it. You said early on, Ron, I still got young kids around and doing that whole thing. So the volunteerism is tough. So if you look at it through the lens of we're offering a social network. Anytime I go to a RGS AWS event, there is no doubt I'm with my people in that room.
Yeah.
So, volunteerism is amazing. It makes our organizations rock and roll. Marilyn, 100% right about that. But don't let that stop you if you don't have time, because you're busy as can be, like many of us, to coming out and being with your people. Because that's really what it's all about.
Yeah. And that's what's the dates on that, Maryland, this year? 19th, 2021 of February? Is that right?
We double check for sure that it's the start date. And don't forget the concert at the front end of that, because that's also a great opportunity to rally folks.
While Marilyn's looking for this, I'm kind of chuckling at the idea of how she would get roasted.
2021, 22.
If she got the dates wrong, Bob would come hunting her down.
He would hunt me down. I always think of the 19th because that's the night of the Upland Partnership reception. So it starts, but for the floor opens on the 20th at noon.
Yeah.
And don't forget the bird dog parade in advance of that. That's Bob's favorite part.
That's so fun. That is so fun.
He's like the band leader when my kids were all in band. He's got that jacket on. Yeah, I think that makes his year. It
gets bigger every year. I can't believe how many dogs show up. It's crazy.
I think some people get a booth with their dog club so they can be in a dog show and have their dog on the floor all day.
I think so.
But, and I did notice that in closing, like I went to a pheasant fest, I don't know how many years ago, maybe it was 10 years ago. And maybe Rough Grouse Society was there. I don't remember, but I remember it seems like in the last 5 or 6 that I've saw the grouse organizations, Wisconsin, the Barons, Rough Grouse there. And yeah, it's not just about pheasants, but it's a place to go if you want to make connections, if you want to find places to go, or if you want to learn something,
Yeah.
Feel the new gear.
Or like me, if you just like to have a good time. It's just like going to Woodstock for my mom and dad.
Totally. I'm overwhelmed by it. I sit in the booth for 3 days, And like I said, I leave more energized than when I came because of the love from all the 30,000 of the world's most passionate upland bird lovers.
Yeah, it's great. It's fun. Well, Ben, Marilyn, Ted, I thank you much. I hope that resonated with a few people that it needed to resonate with. When we figure out what the next Hunger Game or the next tiered up commercial will be to make it work, maybe or maybe that's not the right path. But whenever if you guys have anything you want to promote, Ben's, RGS stays in touch with me. Same thing with Marilyn. If there's a new program or something you want to get out there to people, holler at me, put it back on. I need 52 weeks of content, and I need you people just like we need you people. All right.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for having us
Appreciate it.
on.
You're an
Yeah.
important voice.
You guys
Thank
have
you.
a great
Ron.
holiday
Great
season coming
ambassador.
up. All right.
Great holidays.
As I say at the back of my show, love you guys, love you girl. Love you girl more.